innocent white paper until black ink is applied.
Der kom jo en forespørgsel fra Flemming Rose, om vi ville tegne Muhammed, og det var jo så en lejlighed til at svare på den provokation, som det er, når terrorister bruger en religion som deres åndelige ammunition.
Du vil ikke undskylde noget?
Det vil jeg bestemt ikke. Heldigvis så er jeg nu snart 72 år, og i den alder er man heller ikke bange for noget.
On the 30th of September 2005, 12 cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad are published in the Danish national newspaper, Jyllands-Posten. A provocation that was just intended to show that you must be able to satirize religious figures in a modern democracy. Like every other Dane, I watched in total disbelief when Danish flags and embassies were suddenly set on fire all over the world. More than 150 people were killed. How in God's name did this happen to Denmark? Grotesque. Like some of the imagery of the conflict spilling out on the internet. Oh dear, the Danish Queen as a pin-up in an Arab newspaper. Lace Majesty strikes back at blasphemy. Or an Egyptian pop singer ridiculing our peaceful little democracy. And threatening us all to burn in hell. That's a serious warning. Like most Danes, I rarely go to church. That's why in my Copenhagen neighborhood, I find the beautiful kept church nearly empty on a Sunday morning. So I'm badly equipped to understand why believers flock to their makeshift mosques that won't win any Danish design prizes in the very same neighborhood. We have built mosques with slim, elegant minarets in the Copenhagen skyline, though only as amusement in the Tivoli Gardens. But the protests against the Muhammad cartoons went far beyond our failure to accommodate the Muslim faith in Denmark. I want to find what was really behind those hateful slogans in a conflict over some bloody cartoons. Were the protests really such a spontaneous outburst of religious anger? And to me, most importantly, what are the consequences to our freedom of expression and our right to criticize and satirize religion, especially Islam, in a modern democracy? I want to find out. I begin my journey here in the Danish provincial town of Aarhus, where Jyllands-Posten is published. Does its culture editor, Flemming Rose, regret the cartoons?
Hvis jeg siger, at jeg fortryder, jeg vil ikke gøre det igen, så har jeg dermed sendt et signal til de mest reaktionære og voldelige kræfter, de mest intimiderende kræfter, og fortalt dem, at hvis blot I intimiderer og begår vold nok, så får I det fuldstændig, som I vil have det.
In the suburbs of the same town lies a small mosque. From here came the first protests against the cartoons, the very first sparks of anger.
Det er ligesom kniv i vores hjerte. Hvis de snakker om mig, eller hvis de snakker om almindelige bare mennesker, der er ikke noget problem med os. Men de har snakket dårlige ting om vigtigste ting for muslimerne. En rigtig symbol for muslimerne. Vi elsker profeten Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mere af min far og mor. Mere af mine børn.
I havde jo her i Grimhøj en imam, som også var meget aktiv under protesterne mod tegningerne. Jeg tænker på Raid Halahel.
Ja, jeg ved ikke helt præcis om Raid Halahel 100% hvad han tænker. Men det her, han har sagt, at han er flyttet herfra, det er på grund af de tegninger.
So the man who started it all is no longer to be found here in Aarhus. I'm in Beirut. I want to look for the imam from Aarhus, who suddenly disappeared after the cartoon conflict. In a Beirut internet cafe, I find a homepage of Raid Halachel. Here he explains his anger and why he left Denmark for his hometown Tripoli, in the north of Lebanon.
إياكم أن تظنوا أن الدنمارك حكومة أو صحيفة اعتذرت اعتذارا واضحا عن الرسومات. ما زالوا مصرين إلى اليوم أن القضية قضية حرية رأي وتعبير، بل أبعد من ذلك. ما زالت الدوائر في الغرب كله والدنمارك خصوصا ما زالت إلى الآن مندهشة مذهولة غير مصدقة لهذه ردة الفعل العارمة.
Hej Christian.
Hej.
Hej.
Tak fordi du kom.
Er det godt?
Jo, tak.
Hej.
بالعكس أنا مبسوط جدا إني تركت الدنمارك وأجد نفسي ربحان وليس خسران، ولكن أنا قناعتي أني أقيم في بلد عندما أحس أنني محترم بشخصي وبعقيدتي وبقناعاتي. فأنا غير مستعد أن أجلس في بلد أحس أنني مهان وغير محترم. أنا أرجع إلى بلدي هنا. أنا طبعا كإنسان مسلم لا أستطيع أن أرى أن هناك نظاما يصلح هذا الكون إلا الإسلام الذي أقتنع به. وأنا حقيقة أرى أن الإسلام فيه من مقومات حياة الإنسان أكثر بكثير من الديمقراطية السائدة في الغرب.
Raid is proud of his action against the cartoons.
أنا أجد أن ما حققناه جيد جدا لأننا استطعنا أن نثير القضية في أروقة السياسيين حتى.
When Sheikh Halachel was first trying to stir up the protests against the cartoons, he needed to find someone of real influence. Here in Lebanon, he contacted the leader of the country's Sunni Muslims, Sheikh Kabani. Now he takes me to the Grand Mufti, who also has a strong political influence.
شيخنا في موعد؟ اي نعم. السلام عليكم. شيخ واضح مع وفد اعلامي من الدنمارك. مع صاحب الدنمارك. السلام عليكم. السلام ورحمه الله وبركاته. يمسيك بالخير. كيف حالك سيدنا؟
When the Sheikh came here to Lebanon and informed you last year about the cartoons, what were your reactions?
صدرت عن إنسان نعتبر أنه ليس لديه أي قيمة أخلاقية.
In Arabic, it's not polite to ask very direct questions, but I do nevertheless.
As Grand Mufti, you called for the demonstration, so you must also feel responsible for what happened.
إطلاقاً لا أشعر بمسؤولية عن هذا العمل، لأن الإنسان الذي يقرر عملاً سلمياً ثم يأتي الآخرون ويسيء إليه، فماذا يكون ذنبه؟ لم يكن واحد منهم إطلاقاً يقصد أن يقوم بعمل فيه أي شغب أو أي عنف.
A peaceful demonstration. Well, depends on what is your idea of a Sunday afternoon picnic. The conflict over the Danish cartoons has claimed its first of many victims. A protester dies jumping from the burning building. How could a government allow this to happen? I find an eyewitness to the event, the man who owns the building that used to house the Danish embassy.
Yeah, they came through both entrances. You'll see the other entrance, and they were prepared to burn.
So it was
they had all the ingredients, you know, the cocktails, Molotovs, gas, stuff, prepared in their buses, and the army watched their buses, but the army was not allowed to stop them, and the political decision was to let them in.
To my surprise, the whole riot was caught by surveillance cameras on the embassy building.
With the surveillance camera, you see the people acting inside. I mean, obviously, these guys were Sunni extremists. I'm not divulging any secret. It's known what they are, who they are.
This clearly shows a religious riot that has been allowed to spin out of control. I find myself trying to understand Lebanese politics.
The army here received the ordering to withdraw from the perimeter of the building.
Who gave the orders to the army?
It's the government who decides what to do, you know. Maybe they believed that they were peaceful, but I know they were informed that it was not peaceful, unless there is no communication between the army and the government, which I doubt, because the army knew they had prepared to burn the building.
The surveillance cameras filmed and filmed and filmed until the rioters break the camera, the final cut.
هي المشكلة حقيقة نقطة جميلة جدا. أنا لا أجد أن الصراع بين مجتمع متقدم ومجتمع مرفه ومجتمع فيه حريات وبين الإسلام. أنا أجد أن المشكلة بين مجتمع ما زال في مخزونه الفكري، في العقل الباطن، في اللاوعي عداء للإسلام من أيام الحروب الصليبية. وللأسف حتى أنه لم يصبح متدينا وأصبح الآن علمانيا، إلا أنه ما زال يحمل في مخزونه الفكري هذا العداء للإسلام.
Thanks to the Khartoum conflict, Raid Halachel is now a local hero in his Lebanese hometown. No signs of weakness or remorse.
الذي يسخر من الله عز وجل أو من القرآن الكريم أو من محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولو على سبيل المزاح، هذا ليس إيمانا. ولذلك ممكن الإنسان يتكلم بكلمة لا يعي معناها تهوي به في النار 70 خريفا فقط لأنه تهكم أو استهزأ أو تعامل مع النبي بغير وقار واحترام.
So you think that Fleming Rose is going to burn in hell?
لا أشك في ذلك أبدا إن لم يتب قبل أن يموت.
Hvad siger du til det?
Jeg siger, at det passer fuldstændig med det billede, jeg har af ham.
My next stop is Istanbul. I'm going to meet a man who played a crucial behind-the-scenes role in turning 12 Danish cartoons into a world political clash.
Hello. We're here to see the General Secretary of the OIC.
He's the leader of the OIC, an organization representing all Islamic countries, and I'm invited to meet him in what was once the harem of the Ottoman Empire. Dr. Ihsanoglu feels insulted on behalf of all Muslims around the world.
It's decivilized that you disrespect fifth of the humankind, of human beings, mankind. Fifth of the mankind's belief is it doesn't worth a kind of respect from one side, or just you say, this is, I'm a country, a free country, I can do whatever I like. Okay then. Then the other people who are, in my understanding, are also uncivilized people, they can go and put your embassy on fire. This is irresponsible, and that was also irresponsible.
At the summit of the OIC in Mecca, Dr. Ihsanoglu tried to use the cartoons to turn this dormant forum of 57 Muslim countries into an effective political tool. For years, Islamic leaders had been demanding a worldwide ban on blasphemy, particularly against Islam. Now they thought their chance had come.
أن يكون هذا القانون اللي فيه العقوبات الرادعة على كل من يسيء إلى المقدسات وخصوصا الأنبياء عليهم الصلاة والسلام ملزم لجميع الدول اللي هي أعضاء في هيئة الأمم.
Right after publication of the cartoons, Dr. Ihsanoglu wrote a letter to the Danish Prime Minister.
You urge the Danish government to take action to avoid further escalation. That implies that you are foreseeing or expecting an
Of course, because
reaction.
that was a serious matter. It was a serious matter. There were reactions all over the Muslim world, and I expected these things to happen, and it happened.
Who is then to blame when a debate about democracy versus religious dogmas turns into bloody riots? Dr. Ihsanoglu is not prepared to be held accountable.
You have also a responsibility of what happens in the streets of the Muslim world.
No. On the contrary, I'm sorry. I can't accept. This is a wrong statement. This is a false statement. And you cannot substantiate this statement. All my statements, press releases, all my stand, my letters, in my joint releases with Mr. Kofi Annan, Mr. Solana are on record. This is totally biased, unsubstantiated statement. I regret that. You have to withdraw this conversation. Otherwise, I will disassociate myself with this interview. I'm sorry. You cannot say that, gentlemen. You cannot say that.
What I was starting to say was that
you cannot say that I am associated with the street. I am associated with calming the street. I'm sorry to say this. Please withdraw this statement.
Let me just rephrase it how I wanted
to.
No,
please withdraw this statement.
Yes.
Yes, what?
I will try and rephrase what was the intention of my question.
I got on somewhat better with Dr. Ihsanoglu after a lunch of chickpeas, but had to conclude that even though he was able to foresee the riots, he refused to be in any way responsible. Back in Denmark, I want to know what the Danish Prime Minister thinks about this Islamic move to ban blasphemy.
Det overordnet handlede om, er i virkeligheden på global plan at få begrænset ytringsfrihed, når det gælder kritisk debat om religion. Og der er jeg nødt til at sige, at vi er fuldstændig stålsatte i den sag. Vi står helt fast på, at der skal være en vidtgående ytringsfrihed, som også indeholder retten til kritisk debat om religion.
A letter from 11 Muslim ambassadors in Copenhagen, formally addressed to the Prime Minister of the Royal Republic of Denmark, was identical to the one sent by Dr. Ihsanoglu, asking Anders Fogh Rasmussen to take action against the newspaper Jyllands-Posten.
Selvfølgelig tog vi notits af, hvad der blev skrevet, men svaret vi gav måtte selvfølgelig være klart, nemlig at regeringen kunne ikke gribe ind over for en fri og uafhængig avis.
With no compromise from the Danish Prime Minister, a group of imams in Denmark, among them Raid Halachel from Aarhus, went on a tour of the Middle East to call for protests. They flew to Syria, Lebanon and Egypt. In Cairo, the imams met with the Arab League. Their portfolio of cartoons of blasphemy included a few extras that were never part of the Muhammad series.
This is one of the worst pictures can anyone ever imagine. They imagine our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the hands of a man praying and a face of a pig.
In reality, this image came from a country fair pig squealing contest. A Frenchman suddenly found himself mixed up in religious world affairs. How did the rest of the world react to the cartoon crisis?
Internet searches have been up worldwide for Muhammad after cartoons like this one depicting the prophet were printed in Denmark's Jutland Post newspaper.
More than 3,000 blogs are suddenly discussing the Danish cartoons. The insulting cartoons are sending global circulation on the internet. But outside the internet, newspaper editors often lack the courage to print the cartoons. Self-censorship is widespread in Britain and America. In France and Germany, newspapers take a very different view, publish and be damned. In Berlin, I went to meet journalist Henrik Broder, who now travels around Europe with the cartoons to show them to the public.
I couldn't assume that this was trigger off this kind of excitement. The caricatures were totally innocent, totally naive, and they were so harmless. They were surprisingly harmless. My favorite cartoon is this one, where the mullah is in the skies, standing on a cloud and screaming down to the earth, "Stop sending martyrs, we are running out of virgins." That's a great joke. If you try to avoid insulting Muslims, the next time you will have to give up pork because you could insult Jews, or you cannot slaughter a cow because the Hindus will be terribly insulted. So I wouldn't start with that. I would still insist on the right to offend people because of their religious beliefs, yes. 200 years after the Enlightenment, that should be something which is not up to discussion anymore.
Paris is my next stop in Europe. I want to find out why the satirical paper Charlie Hebdo and its editor-in-chief, Philip Val, decided to reprint the Danish cartoons. His leftist satire is quite different from that of the conservative Jyllands-Posten.
J'ai été scandalisé par la façon dont j'entendais les commentaires sur le Jyllands-Posten en France. Disant que le Jyllands-Posten était un journal raciste, c'est la raison pour laquelle il avait publié ces caricatures. J'ai trouvé ça dégueulasse parce que le Jyllands-Posten n'est pas un journal raciste. Ensuite, quand le Franc, le patron de France Soir, s'est fait virer pour avoir publié les caricatures en France, alors là j'ai dit c'est pas possible, il faut vraiment qu'on marque le territoire pour savoir qui fait la loi, si c'est les groupes religieux ou le législateur dans une démocratie.
In France, it's possible to test the limits of freedom of expression without rioting. French Muslims exercise their democratic rights by taking the editor to court.
Faut pas rire d'eux. C'est une provocation de rire des mecs qui foutent des bombes dans les trains de banlieue et dans les métros et qui envoient des... Non, si le citoyen n'a plus le droit de ridiculiser ces gens-là, foutu. C'est pas une provocation, c'est le signe de la santé mentale des citoyens.
In Paris, I met with one of the plaintiffs, the president of the Islamic Union of France.
Le prophète de l'islam et le terrorisme. Donc nous devons réagir quand même. La loi, il y a la liberté d'expression. Nous défendons la liberté d'expression. Mais quand ça se fait dans le cadre de la responsabilité.
To some Muslims, this means that Muhammad is a terrorist. We think that it means that Muhammad has been taken hostage by the terrorists.
Oui, mais je pense que c'est aberrant. Sur ce que vous faites, vous pouvez avoir la conception que vous voulez, mais attendez la réaction.
Reactions look surreal on my TV, but the bullets all too real. In Pakistan, some of the most violent protests are taking place. At least 5 people die in riots now directed against anything Western. The street protesters are further encouraged by a cash for killing bounty offered by a leading mullah in Peshawar.
तो हमने वाजिबुल कत्ल होने के अलावा ये भी कहा था कि जिसने उस कार्टूनिस्ट को कत्ल किया तो उसको $10 lakh इनाम दिया जाएगा.
Det var selvfølgelig uhyggeligt. Min ellers så brave kone, hun var altså også berørt af det. Det gjorde indtryk på hende. Hun er børnehaveleder. Der kom forældre og spurgte, er det nu sikkert at sende vores børn her i børnehave? Det var meget ubehageligt.
I'm traveling on to the Gulf state of Qatar. With its tiny population and its vast resources of gas and oil, Qatar is probably one of the richest places on earth. Most of the country is owned by the emir and his family. I've come here in search of one of the Muslim spiritual leaders who did most to raise the temperature of the conflict, Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi. He has a weekly TV show on Al Jazeera, the global satellite channel that prides itself on supporting freedom of expression and democracy. Qaradawi calls for a worldwide day of anger against the cartoons on Friday the 3rd of February 2006.
ونحن لسنا أمة من الحمير لسنا حميرا تركب بل نحن أسود تزأر.
His message is picked up all over the Middle East and turned into action more than half a year after the cartoons were printed. The day after, Saturday the 4th of February, the Danish embassy in Damascus is put on fire. Sunday, tens of thousands of agitated Muslims marched against the Danish embassy in Beirut and set the building on fire. Monday, Iran falls into the chain of events, and for the 3rd day in a row, a Danish diplomatic mission is torched. Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi enjoys a pope-like status in the Islamic world.
Assalamu alaikum.
He normally doesn't give interviews to Western media. It's not part of his media strategy.
We come a long way to see you.
At the age of 81, Qaradawi has turned himself into the Islamic world's leading televangelist. In his TV show Sharia and Life, he gives advice on how to live by the Islamic laws of Sharia.
Can we make an appointment then for Tuesday?
Okay.
Then we can stay one...
12.
At 12 o'clock?
Yeah.
On Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yes. Can we come to his house?
في البيت؟
Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Shukran.
So I'm finally going to sit with a man dubbed the Global Mufti.
What is this? This is the holy book here? This is the Quran?
Yes, Quran. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we can have this in the background.
أساء إلى نبي محمد. هذه الإساءة تعتبر إساءة إلى كل فرد مسلم، إلى الأمة الإسلامية، إلى 1.5 مليار من البشر.
An insult to all 1.5 billion? I doubt if Qaradawi speaks for each and every one of them, but surely he succeeded in mobilizing the masses against 12 cartoons few had ever seen.
وهذا أمر يعني معروف إنه العامة إذا هاجوا ممكن أن يحدث منهم هذا، ولكن لم يكن هذا بالشيء الكثير الذي خرج عن الحدود، كان شيئا محدودا جدا ونحن نأسف له من غير شك.
Estamos apresentando Charges Sangrentas.
Hoje, no Salto para o Futuro,
um bate-papo com professores e especialistas sobre a matemática no ciclo da alfabetização.
Acho que o grande desafio para o professor é escutar os alunos e organizar o trabalho de formulação de questões.
A gente está defendendo que se trabalhe para que a criança possa ser desafiada a pensar no problema e desenvolver estratégia.
Então, na verdade, eu acho que a estatística ela faz parte do nosso cotidiano.
Salto para o Futuro. Estatística e combinatória. Hoje, 5 da manhã. Aqui, na TV Escola.
Nas fotografias da Guerra do Paraguai, chama a atenção a presença de soldados negros nos 3 exércitos da Tríplice Aliança. No exército paraguaio, também existiam soldados negros.
No Uruguai, a população negra era uma população razoável, né? Se você olhar as imagens de soldados uruguaios, eles são negros, né? Na Argentina, uma parcela pequena da população argentina era negra, né? Principalmente em Buenos Aires, e muitos foram para a guerra, muitos desapareceram na guerra.
Quem somos? De onde viemos? Saiba como foi o surgimento dos primeiros humanos na Terra e como se deu a imigração para outros continentes. Jornada Humana. Hoje, 10 da noite.
Voltamos a apresentar Charges Sangrentas.
As ideological leader of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, Qaradawi enjoys popularity for his many strong political views.
إذا ظل الغربيون ينظرون إلينا إننا بلاد مستعمرة قديما ويمكن أن تستعمر حديثا، وينظرون إلينا نظرة المتأله، يعني أمريكا تريد أن تسيطر علينا وعلى العالم كله وتفعل ما تشاء ولا تسأل عما تفعل. إذا ظلت هذه الروح لا نستطيع أن نتقرب، إنما نتقارب إذا نظر بعضنا إلى بعض باعتبارنا أسرة بشرية واحدة. ولكن الغربيون يرون أن الديمقراطية يعني تقوم على الحرية المطلقة، هذا ما نرفضه. لا يوجد في الدنيا كلها حرية مطلقة. السيارات لها قانون، يعني وهي تسير في الشارع إذا الإشارة حمراء تقف. البواخر في المحيطات الواسعة لها يعني خطوط سير. الطائرات في أجواء السماء لها خطوط سير. لا يوجد إنسان يفعل ما يشاء.
In the Quran school, students are taught to recite from the holy book. On my journey, I came to wonder why I never read anything about depicting the Prophet, so I asked the man who should know.
Where exactly in the Quran is it stated that you cannot depict Muhammad?
يعني هذا لا يوجد في القرآن، يعني أمر مباشر يعني بمثل هذا، ولكن أجمع علماء أهل السنة على عدم تصوير الأنبياء جميعا، ليس محمد ولا المسيح ولا موسى ولا إبراهيم ولا نوح ولا غيرهم من الأنبياء، حفاظا على الصورة المثالية التي يرسمها المؤمن للنبي في مخيلته.
But it's nothing new to draw the Prophet Muhammad, I realize. Artists have done this for centuries, sometimes with his face obscured and just as often showing the Holy Prophet with his face in full.
If maybe as a last thing, if I could show some of these cartoons, just to have his explanation about why he think it's such an insult to Islam. Because this was published in the Danish newspaper.
دي كانت موجودة حضرتك اللي شفتها دي كانت في الصور اللي هي جاءت بتاع القنبلة دي
هذا يعني صورة لمحمد يعني بطريقة معه ماذا يفهم أي واحد مشاهد أو قارئ لهذه الصورة ماذا يفهم منها مش يفهم منها إن محمد ده رجل عنف ورجل إرهاب ورجل مخادع يعني بيصلي ومخبي القنبلة يعني حتى مش بس راجل عنف وإرهاب راجل يعني بيضحك على الناس مخادع للناس يدعي انه يعني مع الله وهو مخبي القنبله في عمامته هذا يعني كلام واضح تماما يعني تبرير هذا تبرير غير مقبول ولا مقنع اطلاقا يعني.
I feel that Al-Qaradawi kind of regretted giving me this interview. So I was kindly advised to sign a paper committing myself to accuracy in translation. He's clearly afraid I'll exercise my freedom of speech by letting his message get lost in translation. Iran is my final destination in the Middle East. One of the most highly controlled religious states in the world. They were last to join the protests, but came out with some of the strongest reactions. I had no intention of watching a military parade, but was brought here by my kind hosts from the Ministry of Islamic Guidance, who thought it would be a good idea for me to film the Iranian forces' propaganda show. Watched over by the president, martyrs in wheelchairs rolled by endlessly. The rumors in Iran tell me that the paramilitary Bashids organized the demonstrations against the cartoons. Their bastion is in the former US Embassy. It has been occupied by these hardcore revolutionaries since 1979. No filming allowed and only paranoid stares answer my questions. The Danish embassy lies in the affluent and normally very peaceful northern part of Tehran. But on the night of February 6, 2006, things started to look very different. The Danish ambassador to Tehran during the conflict has a pretty clear idea about how the demonstrations were organized and who were behind them.
Det jeg har fået at vide var, at de tilhørte de paramilitære ungdomsorganisationer, de såkaldte Bashish-styrker, som er en del af revolutionsgarden. Og det vil sige i virkeligheden under de iranske myndigheders kommando og kontrol. Revolutionsgarden står under præsidenten. Jeg ved også, at der blandt dem var professionelle revolutionære, for det er altså ældre mennesker, specielt en person, som er til stede, når det skal gå hårdt til, som opildner og vejleder de yngre demonstranter. Denne person var også til stede.
So far in my journeys around the Middle East, I've never met anyone who admits to taking part in the demonstrations and burning one of the Danish embassies. Perhaps here in Iran I can get face to face, find out what makes them act. On the internet are thousands of images of the Danish cartoons conflict. A picture of a man caught literally red-handed in front of the gate to the Danish embassy here in Tehran grabs my attention. Who is he? Could I find him in the turmoil of Tehran's 10 million people? I'm assigned a so-called fixer. I hope he can help me find the demonstrator, but my search is quickly derouted into a strange shopping mall.
So this is like a religious supermarket. It's like a... You can buy everything here you need for a revolution. Revolutionary supermarket. Do we find any pictures of Muhammad here?
This year we recall the pictures.
But before there used to be many pictures of Muhammad.
This year they are recalled. He explained to us this is the last issue.
So this is the last picture of Muhammad.
Muhammad. Hazrat Muhammad. You want to buy it?
Yes, I'd like to buy it. We just bought the last existing picture of Muhammad, the Prophet, in Tehran. After this,
in the Shia tradition of Islam, the Holy Prophet has often been depicted. But as a gesture to the Sunni brethren, the Shia clergy have now decided to impose a ban on idolizing Muhammad.
I found this picture here. Who is this man?
He's Mr. Haji Bakhshi, one of the high-ranking member of the Basij. He's a person who is expert and specialized in demonstrations.
So he could very well have arranged these demonstrations at the Danish embassy.
He may be one of the organizers. He may be one of the organizers.
Do you know where we find him?
Possibly in the Friday prayers.
At the Friday prayers?
It's a place that he always, as a good Muslim, supposed to be there.
So I went to see the sex-segregated Friday prayer. I spotted a few signs of religious fatigue among the worshippers on Tehran University campus, which was occupied by the Islamic Revolution 28 years ago. Every Friday prayer is followed by a ritual demonstration. Today's propaganda theme is the spring offensive against women who break the strict Islamic dress code by revealing too much hair under the scarf or a piece of bare wrist or ankle. I'm looking in vain for the professional demonstrator from the Danish embassy.
Where did we find him?
A voice in the crowd suddenly tells me the demonstrator Ali Bakhshi lives in a place called Karaj City outside Tehran.
This man maybe know where he lives, you know?
Yes, you could ask a permission from Ershad to go to Karaj.
I have permission to work here in Iran. That's how
No, you have the permission to work in Tehran.
I never heard that.
The press con says that it has been issued by the Tehran's things.
Well, that's good enough for me.
Yes, but you cannot go outside.
It finally starts to dawn on me that our fixer has not been assigned to fix anything, but actually to obstruct my search.
Hello?
You know, if you go there, the police will catch you if you don't have any authorization.
But I mean, nobody said anything about authorization. We have a press card valid for the whole of Iran.
You cannot go to Karaj without written permission.
But this is like the Soviet Union.
You know, you think that you have come here from another planet to teach us everything?
No, I don't think so. I'm just saying that you issue a press card, and I think that it would be valid for me to go around and...
No, I have to be informed at least 48 hours before. So...
That's impossible. Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
They don't want us to talk to this guy. The next morning, with a new driver and our obstructive fixer left behind in Tehran, I decide to head for Karaj City without permission.
We're going to look for a man called Ali Bakhshi. Have Have you ever heard about a man called Ali Bakshi?
After hours of asking around from mosque to mosque in Karat City, it finally looks like I'm having luck.
Okay. Salam alaikum.
من دست خونالود گرفتم زدم به در سفارت 5 تا گفتم ما تا پای خونمون پای رهبرمون وای میست. بله شرکت کردم و شروعش هم من بودم.
But did he see these cartoons himself?
نه همون کارکاتور
How do you find out that you want to make this kind of demonstration and eventually burn the embassy?
خدمت شما عرض کنم که دانشجوهای بسیجی که روحانی هم درس میخوندن امام صادق این چیز اطلاع رو پیدا کردن که به پیغمبر طریق دانشگاه نه ما آتیش نزدیم تو محالمون نه ما پرچم بالا بود ما سفارت سفیر خواستیم اهانت بهش گفتیم که اهانت شده باید به دولتت بگی اونا رو بگیرن معذرت بخوان نیاد و ما بعد از اون شب 3 روز دیگه هم رفتیم.
By now the Danish ambassador is receiving threats on his personal mobile phone and his private house is also attacked with firebombs.
Jeg bad Udenrigsministeriet om, hvorvidt vi måtte forlade landet så hurtigt som overhovedet muligt, og det fik vi tilladelse til, så vi besluttede, at alle medlemmer af den danske stab skulle ud så hurtigt som muligt. Så kom vi så ud samme aften.
I have these cartoons which offended so many Muslims. Maybe he wants to see them.
من آدم خوش که نیستم. ببینید.
The cartoons is profitable to him.
خب این حضرت محمد نمیشه. ببینید این یک چیز یک شبیه از سیگ‌های هندی.
So here in Iran, I ended up together with a youth activist in his 70s who owes all his land and wealth to the Islamic Revolution for many years' faithful service as a professional demonstrator. There was nothing spontaneous about those demonstrations. Nevertheless, I left with a liking of the guy. At least he was totally honest about his views and suddenly shared the tragedy of his own life with me. A memorial room tells the story of his brother and 2 sons who were killed in the war with Iraq.
عکس تشییع جنازه رضا اینا رو عکساشونه آلمان بعد 2 تا نارنجک به کمرش بوده موقع منفجر میشه تمام این بدن منفجر بچه ها من خودم درست میکنم که بذارمش اینجا باز بچه ها جمعش کردن بابا باشه این برادرم 2 تا دست نداره 2 تا پا اینا 2 تا دستاش نیست 2 تا پاش
You come and talk to your sons. What happened? Why did it happen?
زدم با گوله توپ زدن تو ماشینم اینا اینجا بعد من اومدم پایین اینا رو در بیارم اینو میخوام آتیش خاموش کنم نمیدونم این عکس مال 1 ربع قبل از شهادتش این میدون مینه
That was the car exploding. Is that the car he takes to Tehran when he's going for demonstrations?
بله الله اکبر الله اکبر الله اکبر
Back in Tehran, I meet the director of Iran's Center for Cartoons. During the conflict, Iran launched a counterattack against the Mohammed cartoons. The government invited artists from all over the world to draw satirical cartoons about the Holocaust. This was to show that when it comes to freedom of expression, the West places its own limits.
Could you please explain to me the idea about this cartoon contest about Holocaust? What is the idea?
ولی این اتفاق رو ما تو غرب نمی‌بینیم. مثلا اجازه نمیدن راجع به هولوکاست حرف زده بشه. الان من 17 کشور ممنوع ورود کردن کشورهای غربی.
Why?
Because our exhibition.
You think we have a taboo about Holocaust, is that it?
Yes. این است که باعث میشه که ما بگیم که اینها تبدیل کردن این رو به یک ماجرایی است که بر مبنای این ماجرا در واقع صهیونیست‌ها رفتن و ادعا کردن که ما 6 میلیون یهودی به اصطلاح کشته.
However, one cartoon never became part of the contest.
When we're talking about freedom of expression, a Portuguese cartoonist, Augusto Cid, he made a cartoon for this contest showing your president, Ahmadinejad, in Auschwitz, saying, oh, I think all these people died from bird flu.
Bird flu. I try to find any image of this cartoon, but I cannot find any image of any open.
No?
No.
Even though it's clear to me that freedom of speech doesn't stand high on the agenda of the Islamic Revolution, the Iranians clearly have a point in picking out European laws against denying the Holocaust. So our best answer in response to this? Remove these laws in Europe. But meanwhile, another hardline defender of free speech, editor Flemming Rose, got caught in the Iranian media web. He is beleaguered by world media and tells CNN that Jyllands-Posten will also publish some of the Holocaust cartoons.
I can tell you that my newspaper is trying to establish a contact to that Iranian newspaper, and we would run these cartoons the same day as they will publish them.
Rose is overruled by his editor-in-chief, who denies any cooperation with the Iranian newspaper or intention of publishing new satires as proposed by Rose. Neither of Jews nor Christians, at least for the time being. The newspaper is in crisis, and Flemming Rose sits exhausted in his office, trying to cope with a flood of emails. Rose's phone displays 127 unanswered calls and 37 left messages.
Var det det absolutte nulpunkt i den her krise, hvis du skal se tilbage på det?
Ja, det var det for mig. Og det var det nok også for avisen, fordi det var der, hvor Carsten Juste, som han har sagt, følte, at jorden åbnede sig under ham.
Og hvad gjorde den ved dig?
Jamen, jeg følte, hvad gjorde det med mig?
Editor Rose is ordered to take a leave from his newspaper. Some limits to freedom of expression, after all, in Denmark. And what about Germany? Back in Europe, at the end of my trip around the Middle East, I discover we are already starting to censor ourselves. The Berlin Opera got so nervous about possible insult of Muslim feelings that it cancelled the restaging of the 200-old Mozart opera Idomeneo. The scenes showing the decapitated head of Muhammad together with other religious icons like Buddha and Jesus was suddenly thought to be a security risk.
It's a lousy opera, so if you cancel the opera, you could cancel it for artistic reasons. But it was cancelled out of fear because of the experience they made during the cartoon affair, and they acted to appease Muslims who at that time did not even know that was the reason why they could get up and get angry.
In Paris, it's Judgment Day in Palais de Justice. Security is tight. I'm back here to witness the court case between the Islamic Union of France and the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. It's going to be an important test for freedom of expression in Europe. Is it legal or not? to publish such cartoons of Mohammed in France.
La presse en France est libre jusqu'à plus ample informé et on saura jusqu'à quel point cet après-midi.
During the case, editor Flemming Rose turns up as a key witness.
Hvis de taber, så betyder det, at det fremover vil være forbudt at lave grin med at kritisere og udfordre ideologier. Her er det en religiøs ideologi, men det kan godt være en politisk ideologi eller en hvilken som helst anden form for ideologi. Så der står virkelig meget på spil fra Europa, synes jeg.
Le tribunal a relaxé M. Philippe Val.
On va saisir encore l'appel, on va faire un appel, on va puiser toutes les voies que le droit nous donne. C'est tout, on va pas à la rue.
Et vous n'aspirez pas un peu de sérénité, justement, parce que c'est pas très
Mais c'est la sérénité, les gens, quand ils se défendent par la loi et par le droit, c'est pas la sérénité, madame?
Je pense qu'elle est très importante. Ça fera jurisprudence et c'est ça que nous voulions, au-delà même de notre sort à nous, à Charlie Hebdo. C'est une jurisprudence qui est précieuse pour toute la presse, pour les artistes, pour les peintres, les cinéastes, les journalistes, les créateurs, pour tout le monde, les chorégraphes, enfin pour tout le monde.
Home in Denmark, our Prime Minister is convinced, as only a politician can be, that his idea of freedom of expression came out as winner of the conflict.
Vi havde vendet os til, efter mange års demokrati i Danmark, at ytringsfriheden var bare en given og selvfølgelig ting. Men tegningesagen, den viste os jo, at der faktisk er magtfulde kræfter, også globalt, som ønsker at begrænse ytringsfriheden. Og derfor er der blevet mere debat om, og der er blevet mere bevidsthed om vigtigheden af ytringsfrihed og pressefrihed, end der var før. Så egentlig vil jeg sige, at det gode, der kom ud af det, det er, at ytringsfrihed og pressefrihed nok står stærkere nu, end det gjorde før.
I don't see it quite so black or white. Nor does the man whose cartoon caused the strongest reactions.
Hvem har egentlig vundet den her sag? Selvcensur, det vil jeg ikke vedkende mig. Jeg vil lave det, jeg har lyst til. Men i hvert fald så er det sådan, at ting med muslimske symboler bliver set meget, meget efter i sømmene. Denne her skulle illustrere en truende islamisk befolkningseksplosion. Den blev i første omgang accepteret, og så efter nogen betænkningstid i chefredaktionen, så blev den taget af igen, og så skulle jeg lave noget andet. Nu er det som om, man så vil sige, okay, vi har vist, hvor vi står, men nu skal vi så ikke fortsætte. Det synes jeg er lidt trist.
I think we lost another little bit of freedom during this conflict to political correctness. Too many people were frightened into saying, of course we are for freedom, but with some limits. But of course, I wouldn't have objected had someone been bright enough to detect the fire before the conflict exploded. The bomb might even have been diffused. And the face of Mohammed blurred into obscurity. An abstraction of a bloody cartoon, much more to my liking.